517 patients. That is how many people passed through the operating room of Dr. Nathan Crowe over a 15-year period at St. Adeline General Hospital. Of those 517 patients, 83 experienced what the hospital officially classified as unexpected complications. 31 never woke up. And for 15 years, nobody said a word. Nobody except one person. A night shift nurse named Maria Delgado, who earned $41,000 a year, had no connections, no power, and no one who believed her. But she had something more dangerous than all of those things combined. She had the patient files, and she refused to stop. Now, to understand how a surgeon can harm hundreds of people in plain sight, you need to understand how hospitals work. Surgeons are gods. That is not an exaggeration. Inside a hospital, a senior surgeon operates with almost zero oversight. They choose which patients to operate on. They write their own surgical notes. They control what goes into the medical record. And when something goes wrong on the table, the surgeon is the one who explains what happened. Think about that. The person who made the mistake is the same person who writes the report about the mistake. Dr. Nathan Crowe understood this system perfectly. He had been the head of cardiac surgery at St. Adeline General for over a decade. He had published 37 papers. He sat on the hospital board. He had brought in over $20 million in grant funding. He was untouchable. And patients were dying at nearly triple the national average under his care. Maria Delgado started as a surgical nurse in 2008. She was 31 years old, recently divorced, raising 2 kids alone. She was not looking for trouble. But trouble found her on a Wednesday afternoon in November, when a 44-year-old father of 3 named David Reyes came in for a routine valve repair. David was healthy. His pre-op numbers were perfect. The procedure had a 97% survival rate. He should have walked out 3 days later. Instead, he was dead in 9 hours. Dr. Crowe's surgical report said the patient experienced sudden cardiac arrest due to an undetected congenital defect. Case closed. But Maria had been in that operating room, and what she saw did not match what the report said. She saw Dr. Crowe make an incision in the wrong location. She saw him hesitate, then continue as if nothing happened. She saw the bleeding that flowed. She saw the rushed attempt to correct it. And she saw the moment the monitors flatlined. That night, Maria went home and could not sleep. She kept thinking about David Reyes's wife, who had been sitting in the waiting room holding a paper cup of coffee when they told her. The next morning, Maria filed an internal incident report. That was her first mistake. Or at least, that is what everyone told her. Within 48 hours, the report disappeared. Her supervisor called her in and said, quote, "Dr. Crowe is the reason this hospital exists. Be very careful about what you put in writing." End quote. Maria did not stop. She started pulling records. Every surgery Dr. Crowe had performed in the past 3 years. She compared his mortality rate to the national average. She compared his complication rate to every other cardiac surgeon in the state. The numbers were undeniable. His mortality rate was 2.7 times the national average. His complication rate was 3.1 times higher than the next worst surgeon in the building. She brought the data to the chief medical officer. He looked at the numbers. He thanked her for her concern. And then he told her that Dr. Crowe's patients were, quote, higher acuity cases that naturally carry more risk, end quote. That was a lie. Maria had already checked. Over 60% of Crow's patients were classified as routine, low-risk procedures. She went to the hospital's patient safety committee. They scheduled a review. 3 weeks later, the review was quietly canceled. No explanation given. She went to the state medical board. They sent a letter saying they would look into the matter. She never heard from them again. Maria was running out of doors to knock on. And then, the doors started closing on her. Her shifts were changed without notice. She was moved from cardiac surgery to the overnight geriatric ward. Her performance reviews, which had been spotless for 6 years, suddenly contained phrases like difficulty working within team structures and challenges with authority. They were building a paper trail. Not to investigate Dr. Crow, to fire Maria. And here is the part of the story that still makes my blood cold. During the 18 months Maria spent fighting the hospital, Dr. Crow performed another 212 surgeries. 23 more patients experienced serious complications. 9 more died. 9 people who might still be alive if anyone had listened. But Maria did not break. She began keeping copies of everything at her apartment. Patient files with names redacted, surgical schedules, mortality data, internal memos. She filled 4 boxes. And then she did the one thing the hospital never expected. She contacted a journalist at the city newspaper named Rebecca Torres. Rebecca spent 3 months independently verifying everything Maria had collected. She interviewed former patients. She found families of the deceased who had been told their loved ones died of natural causes. She found 11 families who had never been told the truth. The story ran on a Sunday morning. Front page, above the fold. The headline read, "Surgeon's deadly pattern hidden for 15 years." By Monday morning, the hospital had suspended Dr. Crow. By Tuesday, the state medical board, the same board that ignored Maria's complaint, announced a full investigation. By Friday, 2 former administrators had resigned. Within 6 months, Dr. Crow's medical license was permanently revoked. He was charged with 12 counts of involuntary manslaughter and 27 counts of criminal negligence. He was sentenced to 22 years in prison. The hospital paid out over $90 million in malpractice settlements to the families of his victims. 3 administrators were charged with obstruction for covering up the complaints. And Maria Delgado? She was fired. 2 weeks before the story was published, the hospital terminated her for repeated violations of patient confidentiality. She lost her income. She lost her health insurance. She spent 4 months unable to find work because St. Adeline had blacklisted her. But after the story broke, everything changed. 7 hospitals offered her positions. She accepted a role as the head of patient safety at a teaching hospital in another state. She now trains nurses on how to report unsafe physicians without being silenced. A reporter once asked her why she kept going when everyone told her to stop. She said, "Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw David Reyes's wife holding that paper cup. And I knew that if I stopped, there would be another wife holding another cup, and nobody would ever tell her why." 31 people died. 1 nurse tried to stop it. An entire hospital tried to stop her. She won.